Hello! Hi guys. Miles Skywalker here. And today, we have kind of a different video. It's different in that we normally do like gaming videos on this channel or streams, but we have done a tier list before. Way way back when I did a tier list for the MCU movies. My opinions have wildly changed on that, so maybe I'll do another one of those. But we'll see. But today I fa well, I saw this a while ago, but I really got intrigued by this tier list here of Batman villains. So we have about I think 30 villains here. That means like main foes. And I thought, well, I want to do this tier list, and maybe it would be fun to do it as a video. So let me know who your favorite and least favorite Batman villains are, like top three in the comment section below. Make sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button. I think we're at 133 subscribers right now, so thank you guys for that support. And without further ado, let's get started. If you don't know how a tier list works, basically, bunch of stuff here. So it's either movies, characters, etc. You put it on S, which is either the best, or A, B, C, D. And as you can guess, D is the worst, but there's not really any too bad villains here, but some of them I'm not as familiar with. So before we start ranking, just want to go through all the villains. I'll go through them, how they're ordered right now. Um, let you know who they are. So here we go. We got Joker, Harley Quinn, Killer Croc, Clayface, the Riddler, Slade Wilson or Deathstroke, Red Hood, Poison Ivy, the Penguin, Catwoman, Deadshot, Bane, Black Mask, Ra's al Ghul, Mr. Freeze, Scarecrow. Down here we have Hugo Strange, Two-Face, Man-Bat, the Batman Who Laughs, Firefly, Professor Pig, Mad Hatter, Victor Zsasz, Court of Owls here, Talia Ghoul, Prometheus, Anarchy, Hush, and Scarface. Now, yeah, that's it. Um, so I hope my mic quality is good for this. If it's not, I'll fix it in another video. And let's get started. So let's start off with the Joker himself. The Joker is one of the greatest villains of all time. His movie was great. He's pretty much been great in everything. He's great in the Arkham games and the animated series. Heath Ledger did a great performance as him. Jared Leto could have done something good with it, but Suicide Squad didn't turn out the best, and they probably cut out his best material. Jack Nicholson was also good. The Joker, all those film portrayals and video game portrayals have been great. Literally, him in the comics is great. He's such a like opposite to Batman, and he's such an intriguing villain, especially when you don't know his past. And I just think he's a great comic book character. And Batman's arch nemesis. Like the Joker is one of the probably the most famous villain in comic history. And so the Joker easily, easily earns S tier. Now, before we go and do this in order, here we have Scarface, or the ventriloquist, I think. I know absolutely nothing about him, except for his name and now what he looks like. Actually, I think he might have been in a cartoon, um, I watched. He might have been in the cartoon, The Batman, that came out in like 2004. He might have been that, I'm not sure, but still, I don't really remember him. Um, and he doesn't seem like that cool of a villain. So Scarface is actually going to take a D tier. And also, I don't know Hush. Like, I need to do some more comic reading or watch Batman Hush, the animated film. Just do some more research about him. Because I don't know a whole lot about Hush. I don't know how good he is as a villain, why he's a villain, how powerful he is. So I'm gonna have to put Hush at a D tier. Because just I can't really rank him fairly outside of that. Um but yeah, I mean, it's not I don't know anything about these characters, but from what I know, they're not memorable to me. Now, who do we want to do next? Let's go for Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange, um, I'm gonna get into some spoilers about a lot of Batman stuff in this video, by the way, whether that's movies or video games, especially the Arkham games. So be warned for that, because I'm about to spoil some of Arkham City. Um, Hugo Strange was a cool villain in Arkham City. I thought he was an interesting villain, but then you learn what it was like Ra's al Ghul behind the strings the entire time. So that kind of took something away from Hugo Strange because that's probably the most popular version. That's his most recognizable version outside of the comics. And I do need to do more Batman comic readings because the I mostly have to base off of games and movies. It's not that I don't have any comic lore, but from what I've seen of Hugo Strange, while he has a lot of potential and he's cool at certain parts of the game and he seems like an intriguing villain, he hasn't really proven himself to be the best villain because when he seemed like a really cool villain in Arkham City, it was Ra's al Ghul behind the string. So I'm gonna put Hugo Strange at B tier for now. Um, why not take out Ra's al Ghul right now? Not on a date. That was pretty weird wording, but Ra's al Ghul, I think he's a pretty cool villain. He was really great in Batman Begins. He was great in video games. He was even great in Arrow. He's a cool villain. Like, but he's not really. Ra's al Ghul isn't particularly a villain that necessarily sticks out to me as, oh yeah, he's one of my favorites. But I really don't have anything against him. But Ra's al Ghul has never been that guy for me, who I have just like seen as one of Batman's greatest foes. So I'm also gonna put Ra's al Ghul in B tier, but I think I like him more than Hugo Strange. And yeah. Um Let's go for Talia Ghul next. Talia Ghul, I don't really consider her too much of a villain. I don't really know if I'm missing a bunch of stories when she's a villain, but she seems more like a love interest to Batman than a villain. But she is a cool character in and of itself. Um, Pretty sure she's good at fighting. So I I I can't really I don't like I don't really see her as too much of a villain because I just see her more as a love interest for Batman in Arkham City. Um, and yeah, so I'm gonna put Talia al Ghul at C because she's never really stuck out to me. By the way, guys, I should probably mention that Batman is like my favorite superhero of all time, but that was pretty recent. It was always Spider-Man. I know that's Marvel and this is DC, but ever since I saw like The Dark Knight, it's just changed my life and appreciation for the character. So I'd say Batman's probably my favorite superhero, and his rogues gallery is really cool, and I think Batman's rogues gallery are like some of probably have the best DC Comics villains ever. Not all of them are great, like, but the Joker, come on, that's a great villain. That's probably the best DC villain ever. Moving on, let's do Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze, I have to put him at A tier. The thing about Mr. Freeze is Mr. Freeze has such an actually interesting storyline and such. Like he's actually a really cool villain, and he has like kind of a tragic story with his wife and stuff. And I really think he should probably get more attention because the only time he's been a feature villain in a movie is Batman and Robin, and in that movie he said "cool party," and that wasn't his only ice pun. Notice how I'm not speaking. I just want the dramatic tension. So Mr. Freeze has such an interesting story, and he's actually a complex villain. And I think it's not really his fights that make me think he's a great villain, but more his story and why he's a villain and how I mean what he's doing can kind of be justified because um sometimes what he's doing he just wants to just save his wife, you know? He's trying to do a good thing, but by what he's doing to do that good deed makes him a villain that Batman would have to stop. So I think Mr. Freeze is a pretty great villain, but as a villain in a like hand fight for Batman as a physical approach, I think he wouldn't be the best. But then again, Joker wouldn't be the best physical, but Joker has a plan always. And while Mr. Freeze is smart, Mr. Freeze has never been at the highest level like Joker has, where he's one up Batman. Or I'm sorry, where he's been as famous. You know, I don't know. We'll go back to Mr. Freeze. He might be an S tier actually. Let's do Slade Wilson or Deathstroke. I'm gonna put him as S tier. That's probably really personal to me, but I think he's really cool in his fighting. He has an interesting story too, and I feel like the best interpretation of him has been in the TV show Arrow, but um, in that show, obviously he was enemy to Oliver Queen rather than Bruce Wayne. But Slade Wilson is an interesting character, and Deathstroke is just such a cool villain to me that I've always been just a huge, huge fan of. So that's why Slade Wilson or Deathstroke goes in S tier. Next let's do actually Anarchy. Anarchy is not a famous villain at all. In fact, my most the thing I know him from is literally a cartoon called Beware the Batman, and I only got like 5 episodes into that cartoon, not because it was bad, but because I don't really watch too many cartoons. I kind of love Anarchy. I can't put him at S tier yet, and here's why. Anarchy, I think he has the potential to be one of the greatest Batman villains of all time, and what I think Anarchy can do, and the stories that can be told with him, can be literally great. He can be the next big DC Comics villain. I think they should definitely use him for a movie um, going forward because he's a really cool villain. But he hasn't had the love that he deserves yet in the comics. He hasn't become a well-known villain enough, and he hasn't had enough stories to prove himself as a cool villain. So while he has all this potential to be a villain and he's super cool to me, I can't put him quite at S tier yet until he is given more, I guess, love in video games, comics, movies, all of that stuff. You feel me? I don't know why I said that, but you get what I mean. Next, let's do Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is gonna go at let's say A tier, and the reason is because she's hot. Um, let's move on. No, actually, that's not the reason. But Harley Quinn's honestly just a good villain, and I think she's been portrayed really well by Margot Robbie in Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey, and she's actually getting um I guess more attention now, and people are starting to see why she's actually a good villain. That's why she has her own cartoon now. I don't know if that's an HBO Max exclusive or not, but or a DC Universe exclusive. But Harley Quinn is a really good villain. Um, who has honestly, I don't think she was ever like an unpopular Batman villain, but she has been becoming more popular throughout other sources of media than just Batman comics. So yeah. Um. Okay. So next, I guess let's do Professor Pig. Professor Pig. I mean, he's a villain. That's it. I don't have any love for the character, but I don't have any hatred to the character. He's just a person that exists that I wouldn't put in Batman's top 30 villains, maybe top 40. I don't know actually who I'd replace him with, but Professor Pig, he's just a guy, really. Like, he's not really a villain that sticks out. And I don't think he's a villain like Anarchy who has potential to be great. He's just not a cool character. Put him above Scarface because I know more about him than Scarface. But yeah, I honestly like Hush more, and I haven't even really known anything about Hush. So Professor Pig just isn't really that guy for me. Um, okay, who do we want to do next? Let's go for Man Bat. Why not? Man Bat. Look, I think I'm gonna put Man Bat at C tier because I think he has cool abilities, and he was cool in the pilot of Batman the Animated Series, but he's not really a guy who sticks out that you really want to see in more Batman projects or stuff, or that you really want to see have big storylines in the comics. He's a cool villain for Batman to fight every once in a while, but he's not a villain who can, at least in my opinion, drive a really cool story. But he's a villain that could have a cool fight with that Batman could have a cool fight with. That's kind of it. So for that, I put him at C tier. Um, yeah, I like that. Mad Hatter. I don't like Mad Hatter. He's not really a cool villain. He's not really smart. He's not really a physical threat to Batman. He's just kind of a guy. And he was cool. He was literally coolest in the Lego Batman series of video games. That's saying something. That's saying something. So, Mad Hatter, not a big fan of him, but I think he's a bit more well known than someone like Professor Pig. Well, yeah, I think he's been given like more love than someone like Professor Pig. So I guess that would kind of make him cooler because you've seen him in more stuff and you've seen him as a bigger villain than him. And I'm not saying that I'm ranking this by how big the villains are. Otherwise, Anarchy would be at like D. So this is just my opinion. Um. Okay. Cool. So why don't we grab Victor Zaz? Um. Like, he's cool. I think he's a pretty cool villain that Batman can fight, but not someone who sticks out as a really cool Batman villain. But maybe they can do something really cool with him, but from what I've seen, I really don't dislike the character, but he's just not a character that sticks out to me, and that's kind of for everybody in C tier. Um, except Talia Ghoul, she's mostly in C tier because I don't really see her as a real villain. So yeah, um, let's grab Black Mask. Black Mask, I think he's a cool villain. Um, I don't really think he's had the best interpretations in gaming and movies. In Birds of Prey, I don't think Ewan McGregor did a bad job with him, but Black Mask wasn't really part of it for that much. At least in his Black Mask literal uniform. And I think he could have been a bit cooler and less um silly. And I think it was actually really cool that what they were doing with him in Arkham Origins. And then they did the Joker twist, which was definitely a cool twist that surprised me. But I kind of would have liked to see what Black Mask could offer. So Black Mask, we haven't really seen outside of comics what he can offer, but I think just as a comic book character, he has a lot of potential, and from what he's done, he's been cool. He's a cool character, Black Mask, but I think if they do him more justice through our comics and other sources of media, that could bring him up to an A tier. Um, so yeah. Let me just. What do we want to do next? Let's do. Let's do. Let's do Killer Croc. Killer Croc B. I really like him video games, and he has a really cool physique, and I think he can have really cool fight scenes with Batman, but he's not as like a character. As a character, like really cool, but just as a villain in and of itself, I think he's a good rival to Batman. So I think he deserves a B. Clayface, I'd honestly say the same thing, except I think he has a bit more character than someone like Killer Croc does. But Clayface, um, yeah, it's kind of the same as Killer Croc. He could have cool fight scenes with Batman, but as a character, I'm not really as drawn into him. Then again, I haven't seen him in too many projects, but I think he's interesting enough. He's not someone that's one of Batman's greatest foes, but not one of his worst foes. He's a pretty good character. Um, okay. So let's do Red Hood or Jason Todd. I'm gonna put Red Hood at A. Um, put him right here. Um, Red Hood. His rivalry with Bruce Wayne is super cool. I think it's super interesting how like Batman basically loses Jason. He thinks he's dead, and he decides to stay strong and focus on Gotham City and get a new Robin. But that makes Jason feel like he's forgotten. So you can feel for both characters and that dynamic. He has really good physical fights with Batman, and I think he's just a really cool character. Um, Maybe I should put him at S tier. Yeah, I'm gonna put him at S tier, actually. I think Red Hood is a very interesting character who is probably Batman's most personal foe. And I like that. I really like how Batman's enemies kind of feel like, besides Batman, the most popular superhero would be Spider-Man. Obviously they're from different universes, but think about this: Spider-Man's villains pretty much all have personal relationships with him. Well, Batman's villains don't. I mean, the Joker doesn't have a personal relationship with him, unless you take something like Batman Telltale. The only really one that sticks out is Red Hood, but that makes Red Hood an extra interesting character because he's the one with the personal relationship to Bruce Wayne. So Red Hood, or Jason Todd, is a very great character who can even get redemption arcs and still be just as badass. Um, all right. So let's do Two-Face. Really think Two-Face is a good villain, especially in The Dark Knight. How he falls into Two-Face and how, like, I guess the burn affects him. Yeah. So the burn affecting him and stuff has been interesting and everything, and I really think having like Harvey Dent as a character who you see transform into Two-Face really benefits. And you don't want to see him become Two-Face, but he is really cool when he becomes Two-Face. Um, yeah. Um, but I feel like as a rival to Batman, Batman always beats him super easily. So I feel like Harvey Dent is cooler than Two-Face is, if that makes any sense. So I think Two-Face behind Harley Quinn for now, at least. The Riddler. Look, I've used to not have a problem with the Riddler, but then the Riddler trophies came, and uh, my friend Zach, you know him as Captain Zachary, he really hates the Riddler, and the Riddler literally stopped him from, or the Riddler trophies really made him not want to get 240% on Arkham Knight. And they took that from him, the Riddler. And he has his stupid trophies all over the place. And I think he could be cool in the Batman, but he's just kind of annoying now. He's just kind of annoying. So that's why the Riddler goes there. Um, Poison Ivy for me. I think B really suits Poison Ivy. I think um she's had cool interpretations, mostly in the Arkham games, but she's never really stood out as one of Batman's greatest foes. She's been good in what she's been in, but she's not really a character who you necessarily need more of. You want to see what happens next with Batman and Poison Ivy. She's just like, oh, cool, Poison Ivy. It's a pretty good villain. But that's about it, if that makes sense. So yeah, Poison Ivy, B tier for me. Bane, A tier for me. Especially Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. Like, Bane is just such a cool character, and when he breaks the bat in the comics is so cool, and he's just a really worthy foe to Bruce Wayne. Yeah, I'm actually gonna switch this. Yeah, that looks good. So yeah, Bane, very good villain, very strong. Scarecrow, another A for me. His powers are really cool, and what he can put Batman through is really nice. He's a good villain, and he knows what to do to stop Bruce Wayne without beating him up or doing super smarts. Just basically having Bruce Wayne fight himself. And then when Bruce Wayne comes to terms with himself, he can beat Scarecrow. So Scarecrow provides a very interesting foe in that regard. Deadshot has never been a character who has really stood out too much, but from what he's been in, he seems like a cool character. He's a good villain. Or yeah, it's not that he's a all these villains in B tier, they're good villains, but the ones more towards the end don't really stick out as a rival for Batman, who you really think of as Batman's greatest foes. He's just a cool villain, but um, yeah, I don't know. He's not really. someone who fights Batman all that much, which makes me not want to put him as high up. But I like the guy from what I've seen him in. Court of Owls, I don't know too much about, but I think they can be really cool in the Gotham Knights video game, so I'm gonna put them over here. I want to learn more about them and their mystery behind them, but I need a little bit more of them to be able to put them at a higher ranking. The Penguin, um, C tier, he's not really good. He's just a guy who exists, who is annoying. But I mean, he's a pretty popular foe. I think he was good at Batman Returns, but in a bunch of other stuff, he's just kind of an annoying character. So yeah, the Batman Who Laughs. I know the Batman Who Laughs. I want to learn a bit more about him and read a bit more of those comics. But from what I've seen of the Batman Who Laughs, he's such an interesting character. Essentially, it's Batman as the Joker. That's why it's the Batman Who Laughs. Um, Really good idea that DC came up with there, and I want to see more Batman Who Laughs throughout comics and media because he's a cool villain with potential, just like Anarchy. But he doesn't. I don't feel his potential is as strong as someone like Anarchy, but he definitely has potential, and he can become an even better Batman villain. Catwoman, I'm not. Let's do Firefly. Firefly, I'm gonna put him at the top of C because cool powers, cool fights, but there's not really too much substance to him and him as a character. It's kind of Firefly. You don't really know too much about him behind the mask, and he needs a bit more personality to stick out as a better villain because he's not as popular. He's just kind of a C tier Batman villain who Batman doesn't really fight too much. Okay, we have Catwoman and Prometheus left. Prometheus, I've always just I didn't even know he was a Batman villain. Um, he is a really cool villain, but I've never known him as a Batman villain. So from what I've seen of Prometheus, it has been super cool. But I've never really seen him as a Batman villain, so I can't really rank him as a Batman villain until I see him fight Bruce Wayne. So him as a villain is good, but him as a Batman villain, I want to see more of. And last but certainly not least, we have Catwoman. Um, let's put Catwoman at. And now I'm remembering the Catwoman movie. Let's put her at the top of B. Um, Sometimes she's not really a villain and more of an anti-hero. Um, Especially in that Catwoman movie. But her relationship with Bruce Wayne is definitely interesting, but she is not really too much of a villain per se nowadays, at least. So this is the Batman villain tier list for me. Here's S, here's A, here's B, here's C, here's D. Let me rearrange anything I need to. That's good. Yeah. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this tier list. Share with your family and friends. This might have been a lengthier video. I'm not sure. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe. We'll see you soon. Bye, guys.